Barton Dunant presents Exercising for Crisis Communications. Hello and welcome to the fifth and final unit of a series of 5 workshops associated with creating a crisis communications team at your organization. These workshops are designed for any type of organization, governmental, non-governmental, nonprofit, for-profit, and/or the private sector organizations. It doesn't matter what type of organization you're part of, everyone is subject to the needs for crisis communications. Every one of those groups can be impacted by a disaster, and the 3 disaster phases of before, during, and after. Sometimes disasters impact one organization only, and most times they impact multiple organizations at the same time. These workshops are built upon a concept called POETIC, which stands for planning, organizing, equipping, training, and exercising. So this 5th one is exercising for crisis communications. What exercises your team needs to conduct before, during, and after any incident or disaster. Yes, that's right. You should consider conducting a what-if exercise during the actual response to the crisis. What exactly is crisis communications? It's a communications made by an organization, sometimes in collaboration and cooperation with others, representing that organization in response to an emergency. Crisis communications is not solely for emergency response organizations. It's for every organization to provide information to the public and its stakeholders, constituent groups, about how the disaster is impacting the organization and what the organization is doing, even if it's just a continuity of operations. There are also times when the crisis communication team needs to prepare reactive messaging that may never be used. If it is needed, chances are that that type of crisis messaging material cannot be quickly designed or approved during the actual crisis itself. Think about crisis communications in the same way we think about first aid, with the steps in order of check the scene for safety, have someone call 911, and then care for the injured. For crisis communications, you need to check the intelligence or information, also known as situational awareness. You need to gather the facts first. Call for assistance. Even if you do not need it now, you will want to have help ready in case something changes. Then communicate your message to the public and your constituent group stakeholders. There were a number of training courses, classes, elements, etc. available on crisis communications, some of which we will highlight in the 4th workshop in this series, the one on training. We are leading with the training from the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC's Crisis and Emergency Risk Communication, or the CERC program. They highlight 6 elements that your communications should do. Be first. You want the information about your organization to come from your group, not a third party. It might be part of a larger group of communications, like from a government lead public information officer, or just a moment later shared via third-party service, for example, a radio station repeating snow days, school closures. But the official word comes from the school first. Not everyone gets the information from the same sources. Be right. Part of what we described in the check the intelligence situational awareness is where there is uncertainty, you do not want to repeat or solidify rumors or innuendo. Stay in your lane and take the time to get it right the first time. Be credible. Speak with authority and purpose. Transparency is helpful as well. Working with partners on collaborative communications helps with the credibility as well. Express empathy for the public, your own workforce, partners, etc. If the disaster hurt people, even if it had no possible connection to your organization, lead with that. If 3 people were killed during a tornado, your plumbing business should not lead with a press release of, "We're ready to help you rebuild your homes." Promote action. Encourage people to do safer things for themselves and their families. Ask for your staff to check in with supervisors to make sure they're okay and if they need help. Show respect for the victims, first responders, your partners, and stakeholders. Disasters and emergencies are very stressful times. There's no need to be disrespectful or indifferent to others. This misstep will become the story and a crisis to your organization itself. Here's how the pieces all fit together under POETIC. In this workshop, we're covering exercising, the process of testing the planning, organization, equipment, and training needed for a crisis communications. The other 4 workshops will cover planning, which includes the priorities before, during, and after an incident, organization of the crisis communication team, equipment needed by the team, and finally the training needed for the team. Here are some acronyms and short terms you may see in this workshop. If we missed any, or if there are any terms or phrases that we use that are different or difficult to understand, please contact us directly at info@bartondunant.com and note the workshop name and number. In the design of the communications team's overall POETE, there are exercising objectives and strategic priorities. We believe these are some of the important elements of exercising the team before, during, and after an emergency or disaster. There are undoubtedly other elements as well. If you can think of any that are generic to any organization, please drop us a line at info@bartondunant.com so we can improve this workshop. Hopefully by now you have a better understanding of how crisis communications is different from marketing or normal day-to-day corporate/organizational communications. It may be conducted by the same individuals, but the timing is very different, as are the stressors and outside impacts to your organization. We will cover a few more specific/tactical actions organized into 3 modules and provide you with an opportunity to practice creating some elements of crisis communications yourself. The preparedness phase is the longest. It's also the phase you reset to after an incident occurs. Now is the time to utilize a stair-stepped or graduated series of workshops, tabletop exercises, and functional full-scale exercises before any crisis incident occurs. Don't forget from our first workshop on planning, disasters can be categorized into 3 distinct groups: natural and human-made disasters, product and process disasters, and fictitious disasters. Workshops will provide awareness and validation of training for the participants. Tabletop exercises start the performance work of your team. They will need to crosswalk the planning, organization, and training needed for a specific scenario, which may also include some what-ifs, like what if your team needs a translator? What if your team needs a new piece of equipment? These types of what-ifs should be spelled out in the organization. In other words, who requests them, the equipment, how to request it, and other sections of the crisis communications team plan, which should be referenced during the tabletop exercise. Functional and full-scale exercises put everything together and utilize the actual equipment needed, the systems, hardware, etc., to do crisis communications for your organization. You should have an outside or independent facilitator organize and manage any functional or full-scale exercises. And that person or group should have their own alternate systems to use for actual messages created. For example, you do not want to use your own production systems for social media and actually send a real-world post for an exercise scenario. The main goal of exercising is to exercise the plan. In this case, your crisis communications team plan, not the people. But inevitably, people get trained during exercises too. Be sure to include your backups and support staffs. Mentor new team members and incorporate your executives, who will be the ones actually delivering the crisis communications, the official spokespeople. Run the exercise, evaluate it, fix what's broken or bent the wrong way, and run the exercise again, or a similar one. As they say, practice makes perfect. Now it's your turn to practice. Please draft the multi-year exercise program components for your crisis communications team. In the 4th module, you identified the training needed for the team. Combined with that list is this exercise list, which makes the training and exercise parts of the crisis communications team plan document. Consider conducting the exercise elements, workshop, tabletop exercises, full-scale exercises, etc. over time. You cannot build Rome in a day. You might need to double back and repeat an exercise if it fails the first time. You'll also need time in between to revamp the plan, change protocols, add new training, etc. Don't forget to establish exercises that cover all 3 disaster scenarios: natural, human-made disasters, product and process disasters, and fictitious disasters. It's possible for one exercise to cover multiple disaster scenarios. A tornado striking your assembly plant has dual impacts. Depending upon how you're conducting this workshop, you can log your responses with your facilitator, or you can use our Barton Dunant blog post at blog.bartondunant.com/EPA, lowercase EPA, and select that Crisis Communications Workshops section under Exercising and Module 1. The practice area for this one is the link called Exercising Module 1, AWR EC2. You can use that blog post to record your practice material and reply to the post and view the work of others who have taken this workshop. The response phase has its own elements to consider, even exercising during it. Now is the time to not only utilize all of the POETE work done beforehand, but also to continue to prepare the crisis communications team with the possibility of a what-if exercise or two in order to cover possible contingencies. What if the feedback from social media were to turn negative? What if some other disaster occurs at the same time? There are lots of possibilities for what can go wrong even further than the original crisis. You may want to bring in an outside contractor to facilitate and manage the exercise. based on the scenario and elements that you want to cover. During the response to the crisis, continue to document the time and resources being used, including any costs for externally produced or facilitated exercises. This is important for human resources, paid time off calculations, possibly even submission to the government for reimbursement or cost share. This is also the time to capture how new equipment, systems, technology was utilized. It may be useful for future scenarios. Capture also the roadblocks and challenges your team is facing related to any exercises conducted during the response. And think about both the quick fixes and longer-term improvements needed, hopefully which will be approved by your management team for the next crisis. In many after-action reports, people indicated they did not have enough training for the situation they were in, and they wanted more just-in-time education and assistance. Now it's your turn again to practice. Please draft an exercise request for the team, which would occur during the response phase, using whatever consulting, outside services requests, process, forms, etc. your organization uses. This will most likely be different for emergencies versus normal day-to-day operations. This is not like the normal bid process many organizations have for purchases. Include in this request any technical or logistics specifications you would need. Can it be facilitated remotely? Does access to internal organization webinar software like Zoom or Microsoft Teams need to be granted to the outside facilitator? Does it need to be done in person? Where would a consultant stay overnight near your location? This will help prepare your team to understand now how these requests will be made during a crisis. Plus, it will help document the steps, forms, approval, etc. needed as part of your crisis communications team plan. Depending upon how you're conducting this workshop, you can log your responses with your facilitator, or you can use our Barton Dunant blog post at blog.bartondunant.com/EPA and select the Crisis Communications Workshop section under Exercising and Module 2. The practice area for this one is the link called Exercising Module 2 AWR EC2. You can use that blog post to record your practice material and a reply to that post and view the work of others who have taken this workshop. Once the crisis is over, there's an opportunity to formally reflect and capture information on best practices implemented and areas for improvement. This is called the after-action reporting and improvement planning. And by the way, this may be well beyond the traditional response phase of emergency responders. If your facility, production, reputation, or other areas continue to be impacted well beyond the public's view of the disaster, your crisis communications team may still need to be in response mode, well into what everyone else is doing as recovery. There will be an opportunity for your team to let management know that their training and exercising was effective for what was needed to do during this crisis. If some communications message failed, in some way there might also be opportunity to Monday morning quarterback an alternative message or send a set of messages a better way. This should be done right away. There may be follow-ups to the media which could be revised or walked back, depending on what was delivered and how soon it was originally corrected, as applicable. It's also good for the team to make these fixes in their muscle memory before too much time has passed before the next training or retraining. Don't forget, when you demobilize any contractors, including trainers, any temporary access to systems and software may need to be turned off. Last chance in this unit to practice. Let's say your executive tried to communicate a message in Spanish, which they do not speak, and it came out worse than Spanglish. Create a replacement message and an apology in both English and Spanish via a workshop to occur now, during the recovery phase of this crisis. Your crisis communications team plan should incorporate the capability to add external exercises for the team after the response phase is concluded. Disasters do not end when the fire trucks leave the scene. Depending upon how you are conducting this workshop, you can log your responses with your facilitator. You can use our Barton Dunant blog post at blog.bartondunant.com/EPA and select the Crisis Communications Workshop section under under Exercises and Module 3. The practice area for this one is the link called Exercising Module 3 AWR EC2. You can use that blog post to record your practice material and reply to that post and view the work of others who have taken this workshop. Congratulations! You've now completed the 5th and final workshop. We hope you're on track to now finalize your crisis communications team plan document based on the poetic elements we've covered in these workshops, and are ready to conduct a tabletop exercise and then a functional exercise with your team, evaluating the results for modification of the poetic process along the way for both. As we have said before, you never stop learning something new. The key is practicing and exercising as much as you can. Thank you again for taking these workshops.